welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. This is, of course, Northern Virginia Association of Realtors contracts. We've been continuing on in regards to the contracts. Today we're going to cover the exclusive right to represent buyers agreement, exclusive right to sell listing agreement, and then the new brokerage representation agreement amendment that replaced the one-pager. This one now is a two-pager. So it's kind of a new form, so I kind of chucked it in here with this. So we're going to kind of flow through this stuff, and if you have any questions, I put some tabs in here to ask questions. So if you have a question, you might want to wait. If it's pertinent at the time, feel free to bring it up. Just wait for a microphone so that we can get that on audio so that the folks who are listening to this later can hear the answers and the questions, okay? So we're going to start off with the exclusive right to represent buyers agreement, page 1. So this was updated right in December of 2023, so this is the newest version. So page 1, of course, the top part is self-explanatory. We're going to fill this in with our buyers information and the company information in regards to Samson Properties. Now, when is this form required? This form is required anytime you have substantial real estate talks with a potential buyer. So until you sign them up with this agreement, they're a customer, right? Not a client. And once they sign on the dotted line, they're now a client. So anytime you're going to have subsequent talks about real estate with a client or with a customer, you want to have them sign up with this agreement. I see a lot of these agreements. We must be unbelievable realtors because we take people out and show them a property and they write a contract and they sign a buyer brokerage agreement all at the same time. So on the first time we took them out, we showed them a property, they wrote an offer, and they signed a buyer brokerage agreement. Or we're waiting, right? Or we're waiting a couple times until we get them to sign it. So just remember, if you're going to have substantial real estate conversations with your buyer, you're really supposed to have this agreement in, right? Because there's not a client until they sign a brokerage agreement. They're a customer, and there's certain things according to DPOR, right, in regards to what we can talk about with customers and what we can talk about with clients, right? So make sure that you have one of these agreements in place. It's for your protection, right? So remember that. So once we get it signed, right, it's appointment of the broker. So it's considered the services and facilities broker is hereby granted the rights to represent the buyer in the acquisition of the real property. Paragraph 2 is buyer representation. It kind of goes into telling the buyer what their representation is. Buyer, and these are good questions. I know in today's day of digital signatures, these are good questions to ask your buyer when you meet them. Is the buyer party to a brokerage agreement from another brokerage? Have they looked at other properties either with or without an agent? And some of these things are outlined in paragraph 2. So it's always good the first time that you're meeting with a new client to make sure that you go over these things so that you understand where your buyer's position is. Have they gone to new home construction? Who wants to sign one of these agreements and then their client says, oh, I want to go look at a house, new construction, and you walk in the door and you find out, oh, they've already been here and they've already registered by themselves and they don't have an agent. Guess what? Most builders aren't going to pay a commission on that, right? So it's nice to know these things ahead of time. Paragraph 3 is the purpose of this agreement. A lot of times I see these blank. So write in here what your purpose of this agreement is. Show residential property in Northern Virginia. Show condos in Reston. Whatever it is, because a buyer could theoretically have multiple agreements with multiple agents for multiple things, right? They could have an agreement with me for, say, residential property in Reston, Herndon area. And they could have an agreement with you for showing property in Fredericksburg. Maybe I don't want to go to Fredericksburg. So I say, well, I'll do Northern Virginia area of Reston, Herndon, Fairfax, but I'm not going to Fredericksburg. So I talk to someone in our Fredericksburg office. I say, hey, I'm going to send you a referral down. they want to look at some houses in Fredericksburg, here you go, right? So they could have multiple agreements with multiple agents. Make sure you stress what your purpose is, right? So that way it's fully established with the client what your role is in regards to their buying process. Number 4 is notices. We don't really put a whole lot of thought into this when we're filling out the agreement because a lot of times in the notice section, people don't fill out the information, but I would highly suggest you fill in at least the brokerage information and whatever information, a telephone number or an email address for the client. And I don't mean to sound morbid, but the reason why I say this is because if something were to happen to you today, would the company be able to pick up the pieces of your loss and move forward with whatever you were working on? And if we can't get in contact with people that you're working with, we're kind of lost, right? So a lot of times what we hear is, and most of the time it happens to be someone's out of the country. We have a very large international community here at Samson. A lot of our agents travel out of the country, overseas, whatever, and sometimes they lose touch with their clients for whatever area they're in. It may not be the best Wi-Fi, phone service, or whatever, and we get calls a lot of times, and we can't even find their brokerage agreements in SkySlope. So make sure that you fill that in as best possible, and make sure that you load these in your transaction file on SkySlope just in case something were to happen. That way we have the information.